Hey, thank you for watching / listening to another episode of whatever you're listening to. Paranoid American Podcast, Occult Disney, Paranoid Programming, Sound Science. There's a bunch of them, but whatever it is, I appreciate that you're listening / watching to this right now. And if you really want to support Paranoid American, if you didn't know this, in addition to being a podcast, we've actually been publishing comics since 2012, so over a decade. While I was still at Disney, I started this company to publish a little book called Time Samplers, and it's exploded into 60 different titles at this point. And the biggest one just launched, at least at the time of recording this, but it's at nasacomic.com, stands for Never a Straight Answer, and it's about Stanley Kubrick directing the moon landings. And I just want to show you some of the cool kind of exclusive things you can get by backing this thing early. So if you go to nasacomic.com, it'll automatically bring you to this Kickstarter page. And you can see, bam, hit our goal at the time of recording this, 100%. So it's definitely going to be made. So you'll absolutely get a copy of this thing if you back it. If you're listening to this in the future and this page isn't here or brought you somewhere else, then likely you can just buy it right now. So you have to skip all this and just buy the damn thing. But here's a couple little previews of artwork. Here's different variant covers that are for offered. This top left one, I actually have in print. I got a couple of prototypes printed up just to make sure that it would look good. It looks great, looks amazing, full color, gloss pages. It's got a nice hefty weight to it because it's 40 different pages of all unique art that you haven't seen before. There's also going to be a variant cover. There's going to be a hollow foil cover. And then there's a little postcard print that anybody that gets a physical copy of the comic in any form, they're going to end up getting this postcard size print here. Here's some different artwork samples from the 3 different artists that contributed to this book. And then here's the important part, the rewards. So by backing this project, you're going to get to pick some different kind of reward tier. The entry level one is this digital deluxe, which has the entire book in digital form. You'll get a PDF. It's also going to have an additional 8 different pages that aren't in any of the print versions just because they were maybe some were a little too spicy, maybe some were a slightly different art style, but I'm going to give all that in the digital deluxe along with some wallpapers and some MP3s and stuff. If you want the print one that I was just holding up here, then the entry for that one is $15. With that, you're going to get that little postcard print I mentioned. You're going to get a trading card. You're going to get a bookmark, and you'll probably get some other stuff because I always throw in extra freebies. You can ask anyone that's bought anything from Paranoid American. I hook it up with lots of extras. If you want the variant cover, which is only available in this campaign, there's a $19 tier for that. It also comes with an extra sticker. If you want the hollow foil, then that one is $29. These ones are going to be super limited. Like, these won't exist outside of this campaign for the next 30 days. So if you are listening to this in the future, sorry you missed out. You might be able to snag one in an upcoming campaign if there's extras. But if you really want this hollow foil, and you should, you can get it right now for $29. And then we've got a couple other tiers after that. We've got a 55th anniversary special for $55. That has the main cover and the foil cover and a sticker sheet and some other goodies. Here's the best value, basically. There's a $99 Cosmic Conspiracy tier, over 40% off of all the different things that are included. So this one's going to come with the main cover, the variant cover, the hollow foil cover, 3 or 4 different sticker sheets. It's going to come with 6+ stickers. It has the trading card, a bookmark. It has a custom Paranoid American Room 237 keychain. And I think the highlight of this is it's going to come with this custom embroidered Stanley Kubrick patch based on the Apollo 11 design. And if you keep scrolling down, you can see all the other extra reward tiers. All of the different items are going to be described in more detail. And I want to show you this patch right here. It's a 3-inch embroidered iron-on patch. You can put it on your Molex bag. You can put it on, anything, hats, backpacks. This is the first time we've ever done one of these custom patches, so I'm really excited about that. There's also a custom fake moon landing playset that you can select as an add-on when you go to check out. So speaking of, let's say that you're sold, you want to get a copy, you want to help support Paranoid American, you haven't used Kickstarter before, the easiest thing to do is you just click on this back this project button on the page. It's both at the very top of the screen and it's at the top of the page. So you can click either one, back this project. And from here, it's going to be like a typical checkout. You're going to select which of these different tiers you want. Again, I highly recommend this $99 Cosmic Conspiracy combo. It's going to have every single thing that the campaign has to offer that's exclusive to this NASA book. You click on that, you pick the country that you're in, and then you just click on the pledge button. There's one extra last step where it's going to ask you if you want to do any add-ons, if you want to throw in like a trading card pack or another keychain or anything else. You can get some huge discounts on the backlog of Paranoid American comics. But let's say you're done with that, you click continue, and then finally, if you don't already have a Kickstarter account, you'll be prompted to make one. You can link it to Facebook. The rest of the flow is just like any typical checkout online. So I really appreciate if you would take a look. Please just back the comic, back nasacomic.com. Anyways, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Good evening, listeners, brave navigators of the enigmatic and the concealed. Have you ever felt the pull of the unanswered, the allure of the mysteries that shroud our existence? For more than a decade, a unique comic publisher has dared to dive into these mysteries, unafraid of the secrets they might uncover. This audacious entity is Paranoid American. Welcome to the mystifying universe of the Paranoid American podcast.
Launched in the year 2012, Paranoid American has been on a mission to decipher the encrypted secrets of our world. From the unnerving enigma of MK Ultra mind control to the clandestine assemblies of secret societies. From the awe-inspiring frontiers of forbidden technology to the arcane patterns of occult symbols in our very own pop culture. They have committed to unveiling the concealed realities that lie just beneath the surface. Join us as we navigate these intricate landscapes, decoding the hidden scripts of our society and challenging the accepted perceptions of reality.
Folks, I've got a big problem on my hands. There's a company called Paranoid American making all these funny memes and comics. Now, I'm a fair guy. I believe in free speech, as long as it doesn't cross the line. And if these AI-generated memes dare to make fun of me, they're crossing the line.
This is your expedition into the realm of the extraordinary, the secret, the shrouded. Come with us as we sift through the world's grand mysteries, question the standardized narratives, and brave the cryptic labyrinth of the concealed truth. So strap yourselves in, broaden your horizons, and steel yourselves for a voyage into the enigmatic heart of the Paranoid American podcast, where each story, every image, every revelation brings us one step closer to the elusive truth.
Paranoid American podcast, and maybe we're going to be a little bit less paranoid today. I don't know. I have no idea what's in store, but we have Michelle from Michelle's Healing Home. She's a folk herbalist, a gardener, a homemaker. She's passionate about plants. She's also the host of the Healing Home podcast, which is on YouTube and Rumble and Spotify and all the other places. And we were also just talking off air that she's got a full moon offering newsletter that she releases once a month, along with like cool little small batch products. Let you take away the intro from me. Tell people where to find you, what cool stuff you've got going on, and then we'll get into a bunch of weird stuff.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me, Thomas. I'm really looking forward to talking to you. And so I am Michelle of Michelle's Healing Home. That is my project. That's my business name. And yes, I am a product maker. I'm an alchemist of my own right. And I love working with things that are natural. I love growing plants. I love talking to plants. I love sitting with plants and making them into medicine, sharing it with other people, and then just learning as much as I can, really, and then sharing it outward. But I do have a full moon offering newsletter that I've been putting out for now probably about 3.5 years. So it comes out once a month on every full moon. And that's my way of getting my products into the world. So I do really small batches. We're talking like anywhere sometimes from like 4 bottles of something to maybe 20 bottles or tinctures or, tins of salve. So I keep it really small, pretty exclusive, but that's like the best way to find out what I'm doing, what I have available, and like classes that I might be teaching about or recipes I'm sharing all through the newsletter. And you can also find all that stuff at michelleshealinghome.com as well.
Do you have any Mountain Dew flavored tinctures?
No, I don't actually. But I wonder, there's got to be some way that you can create something like that, because I bet Mountain Dew is somehow inspired by something in nature. Don't you think?
Well, yeah, it's named after Mountain Dew.
Dude, totally. I have worked with dew from other plants, though, particularly a plant called Lady's Mantle. And it's basically in the morning during certain times of the early spring and the early summer, the leaves have this way of beating up the water on top of the leaf. And it's been like an old alchemical tradition that alchemists would actually gather that dew because they thought that it had highly valuable and magical properties. And you could either like put it into a medicine that you've made or put it onto your face, put it onto your skin. And the Latin name of that plant actually translates to common alchemist. So it's kind of a really cool thing that comes through with that plant. And then the alchemists really highly regarded the dew of the morning. And so, yes, there's a whole weave with dew that we could probably tap into for sure. But that's been my experience with dew.
I do like the premise that Mountain Dew is actually like the alchemist's favorite drink, and that you just don't realize it, but it's actually very esoteric. Like you're gaining some kind of ancient knowledge by drinking Baja Blast.
Yeah, totally. I could totally see it, man.
I have to ask, just because it's going to be on my mind. I see brooms. We were talking about the moon. Are you a witch?
I guess you could call me, I guess you could say that. Yeah, in my own regard. I look at myself as like a natural witch, or a witch that likes to work with the seasons. And when I think of the word witch, I think of the like wise women of old. So the women that were the village herbalists who had a cottage in the woods, who people went to. They were gardening, they were gathering plants, they were making medicines, and they kind of like were the original witch. And then it's gone through all these different, connotations or thoughts about it. There's all this like common folklore that surrounds it, but also, I mean, there's been like a socialized version of the witch. So then we have what is in Wizard of Oz and all this stuff.
This is better. This seems better.
Okay, good. I went back on the Wi-Fi. Let's hope that it holds up. I'll put my witchy vibes out, I guess. Maybe I can conjure up
So is
solid
that disconnect
Wi-Fi.
because you are a witch, or because you aren't a witch and you were professing to be one? Like what kind of symbolism can we interpret from that?
Oh my God. Something is happening. I feel like just maybe the talking about being a witch or something was like vibrating against my Wi-Fi. Who knows?
Well, that would
man?
actually be a good segue, because I'm curious. What do you think about the intersection between, say, like herbalism and like natural homeopathy and technology, in a bit like which we're bumping up into right now, right? Directly.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great question. And for me, it's an ongoing battle within my mind and my heart to blend this stuff, right? Because I feel like it's very opposite, but then again, it like mirrors what's happening in the world and with technology, because in my opinion, the plants, they're always like evolving just like we always evolve. So they're evolving to our situation right now. They're evolving to having EMF blasted at them. They evolve to Wi-Fi signals being amongst their growing patterns now. And how that affects them, I don't know. Is there a positive effect that they feel? Is it all negative just because they're vibratory beings? But for me, yeah, it's been a challenge because I've never really been that into always being on the internet or having to depend on it for a lot of things. But we're moving into this place and have been there for so long that if you have a business or you're wanting to get a message out or you're wanting to talk to people like yourself, you have to engage with it. And you can choose not to. There's plenty of people that don't do it and they have word of mouth, or they've had a practice or a business for many years, so they don't really need to do that as much. But for me, yeah, I don't know. It's been an interesting thing, but I feel like nature and the herbs and everything, they're okay with it in some way. Like I said, because they're adaptable, just like us, if that makes any sense.
This is a vague and leading question, but do you think that technology itself, from a very broad concept, can be like inherently good or bad or good or evil?
Um, I don't know. I don't know if it's actually, I don't think it's evil. I think that it's being presented to us so that we can, well, I'll say this. It can be used for evil and it can be used for good, is how I look at it. But I don't think that the internet or technology itself is evil. No. Um, I think that there's positives and negatives with it, just like kind of everything. But in terms of it being evil, I think like a lot of people are really afraid of like AI and things like that, like it's going to take over and what have you. But I don't necessarily think that like that's 100% the case. I think that we're going to adapt with it. And I think people are going to lean into it or they're not going to lean into it. And I think people with eyes to see will be able to kind of decipher things, even though admittedly I've been fooled by, AI generated things, so not to say that it can't fool people that even have like more hindsight with stuff or have been looking into crazy crap for for many years. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's where I stand with it actually.
Well, maybe almost like naturalist sources, but like the medicine is the dose, even when it comes to technology, right? So if you're inundated with it, maybe it's poison, and if you do a little bit, maybe it's medicine. Who's to say?
Yeah, I like that thought form with it because that's the truth. There's so many plants out there that are deemed poison, but when you really start researching them or you really start working with them, you realize that they're actually some of the most powerful, potent, and helpful plants that you can have on hand. And probably in an emergency situation, or even if it's not an emergency situation and you're wanting to go deeper into something, like yourself or a thought or an idea or a plant. Some of these plants, like what comes to mind is belladonna or even tobacco. These are all members of the nightshade family. These are considered poison plants. These are considered plants that should be used in small doses. And when you go overboard, just like if you go overboard with anything, there's going to be consequences with that. And so these plants kind of are mimicking the internet in a way when you look at it the way that you just stated it. And so that to me is a really good outlook or a good perspective or a good way to look at it. And it is how I try and even have a relationship with the internet and even plants in general. Because sometimes, I look at it like plants are kind of like people where sometimes they don't want to hang out with you. Sometimes you're not drawn to that plant, or sometimes they're not drawn to you or whatever. And then maybe a week later, all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that calendula in the corner of the garden, it's like kind of, I'm really attracted to it right now. I feel
It's
like I
making
should
eyes
go.
at me.
Yeah, totally. Like I should go over there and check it out, but and then that happens like throughout the garden and throughout the forest, at least when I'm in there. And I really try and pay attention to that kind of stuff because I feel like that's where the magic happens. And that's where you start to really cultivate and really great relationships with certain plants. And then you find the ones that are really meant for you. And then you might find one that's meant for your mom or your brother or your cat.
I'm glad you said plants are like people, because another question that I have lingering in my head, like, can a tree be an asshole? Can a plant be like objectively just an asshole?
I think so. I think they
What would,
can.
what would that look like? Like, what would like a asshole tree do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like maybe they'll fall on your house. But maybe they fell on your house because it was like, "Hey, wake up, dude. There's something you need to notice. There was something that you needed to notice that moment I fell on your house. And yeah, I might be an asshole right now, but you're actually going to thank me because I made you acknowledge the fact that there's a pipe running alongside of my roots that's causing an issue that guess what? If I wouldn't have fallen, you probably wouldn't have known it was here. And I was going to bust that pipe in a month with my roots because I can't help myself. You know what I mean? Or, sometimes someone might look at a plant like an asshole if they were to run into a patch of stinging nettle. And the stinging nettle, you walk into it and you're like, what the heck is like stinging me right now? And then you look around and you notice that it's the nettle. And the nettle might have been like, hey, you're stepping on me, dude. Like, now I have to sting you so that you can be aware of your surroundings, be aware of what you're doing, be aware of what you were maybe thinking about. So I do think so. And I think that they can be also very gentle, and they can be very welcoming, and they can have both, just like we have both. We're moody one day and then we feel all right, and whatever's going on in our life kind of dictates. So maybe it was really hot outside and the plants are like, oh my God, I am so parched. It is exhausting to be in the sun all day. And holy shit, I'm just exhausted and I don't want to talk to anyone.
Speaking of talking, do you talk to your plants?
I do quite a bit.
Go ahead.
Okay, I do. And I do it out loud, and I do it through telepathy, I'll say, or through just even sending signals to the plant. Or I kind of look at talking to a plant, even sometimes when I think about a certain plant, I'll start having a conversation with it, or I'll have thoughts about how I might want to work with it. Or maybe I'll say, oh, I've been thinking about mugwort and I've been thinking about making an oil with it. All of a sudden, there's like this instant connection that happens. And I feel like, at least for me, then there's like more ideas that start rolling. And then I might all of a sudden be called to go outside and hang out with mugwort and just like check it out. And then typically there's something else that comes through. So I look at the conversations, like they're multifaceted. They happen in different ways. And there's many times where I'll be in the garden. I'll literally walk past blue vervain and be like, what's up, blue vervain? You're starting to flower. Cool. I'll see you in a few days or whatever. And I just have kind of I got over it early on in my herbalist journey of the embarrassment, or like whatever that insecurity that might come with feeling like I talk to plants, kind of got over that pretty quickly. I think just because I've been more tapped into my spiritual side, or just knowing that there are possibilities beyond us, beyond this physical realm. And I think that really helps anyone who's wanting to cultivate a relationship with plants.
I'm going to just have a bunch of random questions that just pop into my head.
Yeah, bring it, man.
If you plant a flower or a tree or whatever on top of, like, I don't know, a person's grave site or something, do you think that part of their essence of any kind gets imbued within that tree? Does that tree like take on characteristics and personality of the person?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it can work vice versa. I think that you can actually, I think that you could plant, like if you had the ashes of somebody that you loved and you knew that they loved nature or they loved a particular tree, I think that you could add their ashes to the tree and then that would even still work. You know what I mean? I think that whole relationship definitely comes through. And then also, I know that like in the, I'm sure it's throughout many cultures, but just because I come from a Swedish background, Northern European, I know that one of the traditions with my people is that they had like a central tree, like a family tree that they had on their property, and they would bury their dead, their family members, the loved ones under that tree. And it became it was literally the family tree that they looked at while they were, walking in the 3D realm. And then it was their family tree when they crossed over to the other side. And so I think, to me, that's such a beautiful thing. So, and when I look at trees and when I think of a tree, I think of them as people as well, just like the plants. And I feel like we all have this connection to the toroidal energy that is like consistently, constantly spinning here and within us and within the universe and within these trees and plants. And they mimic this. They like mirror toroids. So I do think that can be the case. And I even think that if you were to, say, plant your grandmother's ashes or her body under like an elder tree, which is actually very typical, and one of the trees that is usually seen in graveyards is elder, for a lot of reasons, but it's connected with Saturn, it's connected with life and death, it's connected with the crone, it's also connected with the grandfather. So there's this really wise energy. I think that what will happen is that medicine that you make with those elderberries, the elderflower, or the leaf, or whatever, they're actually going to be coming through in that medicine. So that could actually be extra healing to your lineage in some way because of that, if that makes any sense.
If let's keep extrapolating on that concept, and let's say, just for my own fascination, let's say it's not a tree, it's like a marijuana plant or something.
Okay.
And you plant this marijuana plant and you smoke some of it and you get like, you get memories of grandma or something. Another very typical thing, especially in all sorts of nurturing plants, is cloning now, where instead of taking it from a seed, you take a clone from like a known sort of like strain, or at least like a certain way that it's growing, like a certain variation of that genetic lineage. And you're like, I want that one over and over again. Could that just be like spreading grandma all over the place? Or does it dilute grandma at a certain point where now it's just a plant again?
I love, dude, Thomas. I love this. Okay, I I think she's always going to be there. I think grandma will always be there, like the homeopathy, like you kind of brought up in the beginning. You brought up homeopathy, and I think that, and you know what, in homeopathy, as you dilute your substance, it becomes stronger. So the more you dilute something, and I'm not a homeopathy like expert or anything. So I know like the very basic like measurements. There's like a 30x, or there's like a 60 cc or whatever. I can't speak on all of that, like, to detail. But what I do know is that the more you dilute it, the stronger it becomes, which feels like one of these inversions, one of these opposite world things. Of like, you would think like, how is that possible that if there's less of what was originally in there, that's stronger, but it does become stronger on this vibratory level. And I think too that because when we cross over, I don't know exactly what happens, but it's more of an etherical realm. And people will say that once you cross over, like that person, that pet is everywhere. They're kind of like everywhere all at once kind of thing. And so I feel like it might even be a stronger vibe because of that, because they work on these more vibratory levels. And that's where homeopathy is coming from, or like flower essences and things like that, that it actually may be more potent than we would think.
So if we were to substitute grandma with, I don't know, Donald Rumsfeld or Dick Cheney or something, right? Like Donald Rumsfeld dies, and after the sulfur smell dissipates and you start planting things on it, and you clone that and you spread those clones all over the place, does that make the world like more Donald Rumsfeldy, do you think? Or are the plants like purifying all of the negative aspects and we just get the good parts?
That's so funny. I think it could be a little bit of both. And I think that what if once he crossed over, he like had an epiphany and was like, holy man, I was a piece of shit. He's like, has this transformation that happens or whatever. And then it lightens it up, because I wonder too, it's like, as horrible or wretched as someone might be in this lifetime, when they die, what does that look like, and what redemption is there for them? And uh, do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like, would there be this redemption for him that then in some way having him all over the place would be more beneficial to the world? I don't know. It's an interesting thought though, for sure.
I mean, that's a free idea. If you want to start shopping that idea to your customers, that you've got like Donald Rumsfeld, infused plants, and just see if that takes off like wildfire. On that same note, what about the inverse of that, like plants dying? And this might be weird, but I think this is the movie called The Happening. It was like an M. Night Shyamalan, and Mark Wahlberg was in it. Does this ring any bells for you?
I don't think, no, I haven't seen
Okay,
it.
well, without spoiling it, there is one major plot point of the movie, and it's that they realize the trees and the plant life are starting to like fight back against humans, the same way that humans have been like polluting the earth, and the trees are forced to convert our carbon monoxide into oxygen. Like they're kind of taking the brunt of this, and they're like feeling attacked almost. That's the implication. So they start attacking people back by releasing their own toxins, which start knocking people out left and right. And I guess the question at that is there a realistic possibility in your mind that at some point trees and plants start like becoming antagonistic towards us, like actively fighting against us because we are like an existential threat to them?
I wonder if they're already doing it in their own way somehow. Because I wonder if, because to me, there's like all these lessons in the plant. And there's already like, for example, the yew tree, which is typically corresponded to as the world tree in Norse mythology. Some people say it's the ash tree. I think it's the yew tree. And the yew tree is one of those poisonous plants, okay? And the poison is actually a hallucinogenic, gas or essence or like oil that is dispersed from the tree when it warms up. And so if you're not aware of that and you're under the yew tree and it's warming up and these oils are kind of dispersing into the air from because of the heat of the sun, and you start to kind of go into this place that's not this realm, I almost feel like it's the plant kind of retaliating and showing you or saying, like I said earlier with the nettle, of like, you're not paying attention or you weren't aware of this property of mine. So now you must face the consequence of not being aware or not maybe taking the time to respect that, if that makes any sense. But in terms of, I kind of now want to watch this movie that you're talking about because I'm interested to see how they do that. If you do, you have an example of like, and you don't, I guess not to spoil it, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a classic scene where they're all walking around outside and people are just falling down, just getting knocked over. And they start to realize, like, oh my God, I think it's the trees, because every time there'll be like these gusts of wind and you'll see, you know, all the leaves flutter and has that breathing motion and people just start dropping and they slowly put it together. I won't give the ending away the movie. It's typical M. Night Shyamalan where it's like the old switcheroo and they make you think something that you didn't think originally. But that was the takeaway for me, was that, oh my God, if the trees really were to get mad at us and wanted to strike back, like, we're screwed. Like, what are you going to do to defend yourself against the thing that's converting oxygen for you? Like, if it decides, you're not getting oxygen now you're going to get this other thing, there's not a lot you can do to prevent that.
That's a great point too. And then it's a good reminder of how important they are and how much we should be respecting them, and kind of how much in common or in like in society these days, I feel like that kind of goes out the window. Cause a lot of times, you know, I know people who have moved into new houses and they just fucking bulldoze all the trees. And they're like, yeah, what do I need these trees for or whatever, you know? And it's like, yeah, I get it. If they're annoying to you or you're afraid they're going to fall in your house or something, or if it's like at risk, I get it. But you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think that it might be a good lesson in the respect of things. And yeah, I want to watch that now because I'm interested in that.
Well, let's take that example and extrapolate it a little bit, of like disrespecting trees and like the worst case. Let's say that there's like a natural preserve somewhere and it's got all these beautiful trees that have been there since forever and their habitats. And then a real estate developer gets his hands on the deed to the property, and order of business is just straight fern gully. Just go in there and chop all the trees down and kill all the fairies and the gnomes and everything, right? In that scenario, are trees angry at us? Are they feeling pain? Are there ghost trees that are like attached, like they didn't finish everything they had to do on the planet? Like, are there correlations between what we attribute to people and to trees?
I think so. And I really love the way your mind works here. These are really awesome questions. Yeah, the thought of a ghost tree, man, you know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of Poltergeist, the movie Poltergeist, where it's raining and then there's like the pond that forms and they realize that they were all that whole subdivision had been built over an Indian burial ground, and there's all the skeletons coming up and stuff. I feel like the trees might do that in the same way. What if going back and the roots keep coming to my mind. I have a few thoughts about roots, but going back to the roots and the example I used of that tree that might fall on your house to show you where the pipe is or whatever. What if those ghost trees are like, no, 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 I wasn't ready to go, and you guys totally took out my whole family. So now I'm going to wreak havoc on your plumbing, on all your piping, on all your foundations, because I think too, the trees, they're not to say that they're more powerful than us, but I think their power comes through in a different way than what ours does, because we both have the power to destroy each other. Just like you were saying, like you could go through and bulldoze it, but they can also kind of destroy us. They could kill us if you're not careful. If you are cutting down a tree, or you're in the forest and there's what they call the widowmakers, the long big branches. It's called a widowmaker. And so if you go camping, a wise thing to do is always look above you where you put your camp up, because sometimes there's like limbs that appear that they're dead or they're dying or whatever. And sometimes if there happened to be a windstorm that would come through and one of those dead branches fell, it could make you a widow. It could create a widow there, because it's going to take you out. And so I feel like there's that kind of energy going on. And I think too, one of the other things I thought of with your previous question about like the trees kind of starting to turn against us, there's this idea too of like certain mountains or certain trails or certain parts of the forest being like trickster mountains or trickster forests or the Black Forest or whatever. And I've heard people talk about, and I've even kind of felt this way before, but it all comes back to paying attention and being present and being aware that like there's roots that feel like they kind of like pop out of nowhere and you might trip on it, or you might like twist your ankle or something like that. And it's almost kind of like, wait a second, I've walked this trail so many times, I've never noticed that root before. And it's like, was it a Mandela? Did you just forget? Have you just never noticed that root? That's the biggest possibility in my opinion. But for whatever reason, that root was just like, nope, you have to like slow down, or you got to pay attention here. So just like popping up and making you trip, which is kind of interesting to me.
It makes me think I actually do have an old tree root system in my front yard that's like, there's no tree there. There hasn't been a tree there since I moved in over a decade ago, but like the root system's there and it just wreaks havoc nonstop. And I always figure like it's mad. Like whoever chopped it down, they didn't say like the final blessing or whatever you have to do to like let it go in peace. What about, and it reminds me of the concept of mycelium, which is like the underground network of like mushroom roots, for lack of a better word. What do you think about mushrooms compared to trees and plants? Is it just like another version, or mushrooms like aliens from another planet? Do they have their own special category?
Yeah, I think that they have their own special category, but I also think that they all work in this symbiotic, beautiful relationship, because one can't exist without the other, it almost feels like. And especially with the mycelium, it feels like they are kind of like the queens of the forest, or they kind of produce all the bacteria and they keep it all healthy and they keep the soil nice and moist, or they keep it nurtured or what have you, so that the trees and the plants can grow. So it kind of like the same thing with us and the trees or the plants. I think the plants, they would probably exist even if we didn't exist, but there is some sort of exchange that's happening. It's just like what it makes me think of with certain flowers, like for example, a calendula. I know I brought it up earlier, but calendula is known as a flower that really benefits from being deadheaded. And to deadhead a flower, for those who might not know, is like literally just when you harvest the flower, or just taking the flower that may have already bloomed and is now kind of, the petals are falling. You just pluck that flower head off. And you're going to get like multiple more blooms from that plant. And sometimes you can extend the flowering season of a plant just by trimming it and deadheading it. And I think I love that concept. And I try and do that because it's really interesting to see. I'll like choose to deadhead one plant and then I won't deadhead another just to see what happens and how much more productive you get. The flowers sometimes end up like becoming smaller throughout the season, but you still get flowers and then you're still feeding the pollinators. You're still going to be benefiting from whatever flower that was. You might have cut flowers into the fall where you didn't. If you had, if you didn't deadhead, you wouldn't have that.
That premise of like deadheading a flower, also it's a weird concept because I remember when I first moved to Florida, there was lots of people that have these. I don't even know what kind of tree it is. You'd probably know if you saw it, but I can't describe it well enough. But like every year around summer, they'll just straight chop them down, almost like they just cut all the limbs off, and you just see these like sticks of wood coming out of the ground. I remember thinking like, man, what a shame. Like, why do they keep mutilating these poor trees? But I come to find out that that's just how you naturally trim those trees so they can keep growing back over and over again and look good and healthy. But I'm like wondering, is that for our benefit? Like, how does the tree feel about just having all of its limbs chopped off every single year? Or is it like, oh, thank God? Is it like shearing a sheep where it's like, oh, I got that extra layer off me, I can grow again? Or is it like, oh my God, you're cutting off my arm, stop?
Right. And I think too, it's a good thought because I think that certain shrubs and trees will benefit more than others. Because sometimes, and admittedly, I've trimmed like there's like just cedar shrubbery that we have in front of our house. And I trimmed some of that and it totally like started dying, like a couple months later. And that could have been my novice idiot way of doing it, or I didn't look into it enough. Maybe it was the wrong season or whatever. But something like an elder tree, like I know I've already brought up, they love being trimmed and you'll want to trim it. And when you trim it, it's going to produce more and more and more for you each season as you do that. And so, yeah, it is interesting though, too, because whenever I think about suburbia, and I think of trees, I think like they're on the chopping block like constantly, or like their number might be up to be on the chopping block at any moment. But then I also look at the region we live in. And there's clear cuts like throughout the Columbia Gorge. You just drive through the gorge and it's like, wow, they just will clear cut something. And then they don't really replant it or whatever. And so there's a big question of that relationship that we have with trees and how we look at them and if they're a burden or not. Yeah, it's a big rabbit hole for sure.
Do you think there's a hierarchy among trees or plants? Like, were redwoods objectively superior to like Bermuda grass?
Ah, interesting. I've never thought of it like that. I mean, I could definitely see that though, because kind of just like the natural hierarchy of a family, I look at it like that. Like, look at a wise old tree that's like 120 years old versus a tree that's kind of just coming up, or a shrub or a plant. Like you have plants that you just planted maybe, or maybe you have a patch of mugwort that's super old. Maybe it's been around for 5-10 years. And then maybe someone gave you a start of mugwort from a young plant. There's going to be that natural hierarchy because they just even have more wisdom because they've been there for that much longer than the other tree or the other plant.
This is something that you would probably know better than I would. Are there any like philosopher's stone equivalents in the plant world? Like mythical rumored trees or plants that you feel like might exist out there, but just people haven't found it yet?
Ooh, gosh, that's a really good question. I don't know. I have to think about it. I might be able to think of something while we're talking because now I'm like racking my brain. I'm even racking my brain of plants that I know have some sort of connection like that. The lady's mantle for sure is like that, like highly regarded by the alchemists. So is lemon balm. but I'm always open to thinking and knowing that there's plants out there that we have not discovered and we maybe will never discover, or there's something new that you see and you're just like, wow, what the heck, how have I never seen this before? Kind of like in the jungle. I think the jungle is like that. I've never been to the jungle, but I want to go someday because I've heard so many crazy stories about the jungle, and you hear stories like that where they're discovering new plants kind of all the time. And then it kind of makes you think about, all right, was there some sort of like Mandela that happened, that this has been here the whole time, but right now, for whatever reason, like humanity needs it, or this plant felt like it needed to come out right now, or it's been waiting like literally in the chamber to until this time to come out, and something happened that was divinely planned somehow, like it was already known that, oh no, this plant is not coming out until whenever this happens, and once that happens, it's going to be everywhere. That would be interesting. That's an interesting thought to think about for sure.
Like an album release, they're like waiting for everyone to like be ready for this big album drop. And there's a lot of iterations of this one, part of Japanese folklore, and I know other ones too, but there's this concept that once like a human disease or malady comes up, then like nature's like, oh, and here's the antidote for that. Like, oh, a bad thing occurred, here's the good version of that, or here's the inverse of that. I don't know how much credit I give it, but I'm curious, like, if you give that any credit.
Yeah, I do give that credit, because I think about things like, I think I've heard of that happening during like like the Fukushima stuff. And I can't say, I have varying opinions on all these things, nuclear, this, that, and the other. But there's like plants that will pop up after that event that could be helpful for that radiation or for whatever that event is bringing onto the population. Or another thing is after forest fires, there's literally like a fireweed that comes up, and it's a really beautiful like pink flower. And a lot of times when you see it in a place, it's sometimes will be in a clear cut, but it will a lot of times grow in an area that was burned like the year before. And so I think that those plants must have particular constituents to also heal the land, and then in turn be able to heal the people that maybe went through a forest fire. Maybe, you know what I'm saying? Or like, for example, there was a clear cut that happened not too far from our house last summer. And now this summer, it is covered with mullein. It's covered with mullein plants, and it's covered with oxeye daisy. And it's pretty incredible actually to see just in 1 year how these plants just came in and was like, phoom. I mean, it is just, it's kind of overwhelming when you look at it to see how many plants grew with, between the time. And it's almost just like they came in to repair the land, and almost like kind of like even close something off or protect that space in some kind of way. And mullein, when I think about that, is like, it's a plant that corresponds with Saturn. And so I always think of protection with Saturn, and it has this ability to kind of like cradle something or contain something. So it's almost like the mullein came in and is like containing this area as well as it can, because it's exposed now. There were all these beautiful trees and now they're not there. And mullein is such a prolific grower, and it grows up really straight and really tall. And it's sometimes used for a spine medicine, because it can actually help us to have a straighter spine. It can help repair the spine. And then on an energetic level, it can be used to help us be more confident and stand strong. Like if you might have to deal with a situation with something or someone that you're like, oh man, all right, this one is a heavy one for me. So like using mullein before you were to go into that situation to kind of have that wisdom that Saturn holds, that protection, but also that ability to be really strong and in your person and in your conviction and everything else. And that's where, for me, my relationship with plants is really, really potent. Is that thin line between the energetics and then the actual physical medicine that comes through, because I think they work so well together, and there's so many synchronicities with that connection. And I think like that's one of the reason plants are here, is for us to kind of remember that there is something going on there, whether we can explain it or not. There's definitely this etheric connection that we are in together, and you can tap into it and you can utilize it, and it comes through strong if you are open to it, I would say. And even for people who aren't, I've had people who are really skeptical of things, and they take something and they're like, how is this going to work? And then they're like, oh my God, it actually worked. Or you told me I was supposed to take this flower essence, or you suggested I take a flower essence. And I'm thinking that these people are thinking to themselves, how is that flower literally gonna help me or heal me? And something happens where they're like, wow, it actually did make me take some time to think about A, B, or C. And I never think about A, B, or C. And so anyway, there's this whole rabbit hole of that as well that goes on. That's really, really cool. And I think just observing nature in its cycles, and if you can do that throughout like a couple years, you'll notice these little things that pop up, like different plants and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that would think like, oh well, if this doesn't require a prescription, or if it didn't come from Pfizer, then how could it have any benefit? When really they just kind of isolated the thing that was in the plant that you could have just taken directly anyways, right?
Totally. That's exactly what's going on. And they know it too. I mean, and I think more people are starting to understand that. It's just like in the beginning when you asked me about Mountain Dew, it's like that Mountain Dew, someone was inspired by something probably from nature, literally Mountain Dew. And for whatever reason, that was the flavor that came through, and I love thinking about that stuff, because to me, it's empowering to think about the fact that the pharmaceuticals that so many people are unfortunately dependent on are dependent upon nature. They're dependent upon the things we're talking about. These more etheric relationships, the more energetic relationships, and the fact that this stuff just grows on its own a lot of times and you don't have to cultivate it. To me, it's like this weird inversion. It's like the thing that so many look to for relief is highly dependent upon the thing that is just like so abundant, and there's no shortage of it whatsoever.
And you were mentioning like people being skeptical until they actually see it working for themselves, and a lot of that. And you were also mentioning how certain plants like associate with planetary bodies, like Saturn is like what mugwort. And that's, in my opinion, that's one of the greatest ways to break through someone that's got skepticism. It's like, oh, I don't believe in all that zodiac and astrology and horoscopes. So it's like, but if you look at a perennial, right, like it literally like lives and dies based on what the current, and it's not the stars doing it maybe, but like the time of year, like they grow at very specific times, they react in very specific ways at certain points of time. To where like even if you didn't pay attention up there, if you're just paying attention to how the plants are growing, you could tell what time of year it is, and all sorts of things you can derive from that. And I guess an extension of that is how do you feel about hydroponics and aeroponics and having like a big like an interior greenhouse with no natural sunlight, and you just simulate all those lights with various types of fluorescent LED lightings and filters? Do you think that like we're creating schizophrenic plants by doing that?
Oh, great question, man. Yeah, I think that I noticed such a difference between plants that were grown in the sun versus indoor in artificial light. And I don't think it's a bad thing, though. I do see the benefit of that. And I see that there's a lot of possibilities with it, even in terms of being able to experiment with something during the off season or what have you, and mimicking these conditions. And I don't have experience growing hydroponically, but I have seen people and gone to their grows that are hydroponic, and I'll say like seems pretty healthy to me, and the roots are always usually pretty healthy, but it depends on what the person's doing and how they're operating too. I would say though too that when I notice, especially from cannabis, like through cannabis is where this is like kind of the most popular way of describing what we're talking about when it comes to artificial light, or even doing it outdoors. When you're growing outdoors, you can do light deprivation, and people do who have big grows. You
Right, the
deprive them of
flowering at different times where you've got some control over that.
exactly, and that's done outside in many outdoor grows. I've done it myself, and so it's like I think too it's a testament to us and plants being, again, adaptable, but being open to be experimented on or something like that. It's kind of strange when you think about it like that. Because I think that they know the difference. I really do. I think because there's such an intelligence running through them. So I think that they can tell the difference, they adapt to it, and then they just carry on and they do what they're going to do, regardless if it's artificial light or not. But I think that for me, like I said, noticing the difference between like sun-grown cannabis versus indoor cannabis, there's always like a lightness or a more openness to the high. That's just my opinion. Like there's something that feels it is a little bit lighter, even doesn't seem to bog me down as much. But then again, I've smoked indoor that's like a sativa that I'm like, woo, what's up? You know what I mean? And so I think it's just basically comes down to how sensitive you are or how open you are to the possibility of there being differences between the two. And I think that greenhouses, though, are super valuable because there's people that aren't able to grow outside for whatever reason. Whatever that reason is, I'd rather have people growing indoors in artificial light, I guess, than not growing. That's how I feel about it.
What about GMOs? What if they're like, I'm only going to grow a plant if I can genetically modify it and make it like a super monster plant? Do you have any reservations or moral or ethical sort of, like protests against that?
I guess I think like to each their own, and I wish you the best of luck in your health moving forward. It's kinda how I
What
look
about
at
from the plant's perspective? Like, do you think that like the corn cares that it's like super, like steroid corn, or do you think it's like, hell yeah, this is awesome. I'm bigger and better than I've ever been.
That's so funny. I've never thought of it that way. Yeah, wow. I wonder. Part of my initial thought is that they don't really like it because it is altering what they naturally would be. And so I think like I always put that same kind of thought form onto a person. Like it's like, okay, yeah, you can go get plastic surgery, you can do all this stuff, you can make yourself look a certain way or whatever. But at the end of the day, how happy are you going to be? And why are you doing that? Why do you feel like you have to mutilate yourself or add something to yourself that's not really yours in order to be more attractive or feel as though like you're stepping into your own more by doing that? Because a lot of times the things you hear about these things that, yeah, there's like a boost maybe in the beginning right after you get some sort of surgery, a cosmetic surgery or whatever. But over time, these things break down. There is a spiritual, a physical, an emotional consequence to all these things. And I think that the same thing happens with the plants, because what we're seeing now too is like the plants that have been genetically modified or have been factory farmed for so many years, we're learning and we're now seeing that, man, they actually don't taste that good anymore, or the nutrients aren't there. And I'll just bring this up because it's something I've noticed. And particularly this year, I love melon. Okay. I love eating melon. So when it's melon season, I'm all about it, whatever. And so I've purchased a handful of melons so far. And dude, majority of them literally taste like nothing, even if they're organic. And so I'm like, what is going on here? And I keep seeing these videos on Instagram about like fake fruit and all this stuff. And I'm watching these people and they're like, they have a banana and they're trying to break it. And it's like all rubbery and stuff. And there were avocados that were like that. And I've also gotten avocados that either they're just like crappy. Like I cut into it. I'm like, okay, whatever. But like they're super rubbery and hard, even when they feel like they're ready to go. And so I think that we're kind of seeing the results of this GMO thing. So maybe the corn felt good the first couple years because it was like, holy crap, man. Like, and look at all my brothers and sisters. We're doing great. And then now it's like, oh, never mind. We all feel like shit. And like, actually, we're making other people feel like shit. And the soil doesn't feel good either. So what the heck just happened? And that's kind of where my mind goes when I think of it like that.
What about when you said like a plant almost has, and I'll paraphrase some of what you said instead of repeating exactly, but it was like they almost have like a genetic memory, or like they know what they're supposed to be, and then they start becoming something that wasn't what was like naturally in their programming, and that might cause some sort of dissonance. Does that apply to like splicing plants where like, you'll chop an apple tree and they'll put like the branch of a lemon tree in it, and then now it's growing lemons based on the root of an, I don't know if lemons and apples work that way, but you know what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, totally. No, I think too, I think it's kind of that same thing. Like they call it like Frankenfruit or whatever, it's probably never going to thrive as much as it would if it was separate. But then you think of stuff, it makes me think of roses, because roses are one of the major plants or flowers that this is done to. I think it's called grafting when they do it with the rose.
Grafting, that's the word. Yeah.
Grafting. And so, I mean, we live an hour outside of Portland, but we lived in Portland for 13 years. Portland is known as the city of roses. There are roses that grow everywhere in that city, and they have a phenomenal rose garden that is like, I mean, we would bring people there from out of town because it's like, if you've never been to just a straight rose garden, it's breathtaking, it's incredible, it's beautiful, all the things. And I was like, man, how many of these roses are actually have been there? Most of them are probably grafted from an original rose, because when you look at a wild rose, it doesn't really look much at all like a cultivated rose that has, all the petals and it's all fluffy looking and, whatever. It's wild roses are actually quite small and they have 5 petals, and you can find different 5-petaled wild roses throughout the forest. But when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, wow, look at what we've created. It's glorious and beautiful. But are these roses as happy as the wild rose? I don't know.
Well, again, on that same note, and I'm saying this somewhat sarcastically, but it's like, why didn't nature make the better rose first? Like, why did it take humans to come in there and make a better rose? Why did it take humans to come in and make a bigger seedless watermelon that doesn't have like 800 seeds inside of it? Like, why does nature suck, and why are we improving on it so much?
I think it's our perception that it sucks, because we are, I think at least in the modern Western culture, we want it bigger, we want it better, we want it now, we want it to change, we want it faster, we want it now, give it to me now. And that is becoming more and more of the energy that I get. And even, with internet-y stuff or being on social media or whatever, seeing like the stimulation that's needed to get someone's attention. And I think like that's part of it. And I think too, we're a society that we're not communist. What's the word? I mean, some might say that. What is the word? It's
Capitalist?
Capitalist. Thank you. Yes. We're a capitalist society. So people want to we're making money. We're creating businesses. We need money to function in this place, whether you like it or not. And so I think it's probably a part of it is like, how can we make more money? Well, if we make this rose bigger and more beautiful and more scented, people are going to be more attracted to it. And so I think that there's something to be said about that, and just like how society functions and our programming that we've been instilled with from young ages. And it just it's kind of continuing,
What do you feel about Christmas trees? The whole premise of like chopping a tree down, and let's say you don't go to like the place at the end of the road and you don't get the fake one from Target or whatever, but you actually go out into the forest and you chop the tree down, you bring it inside. Is that a disservice to the tree? Is it honoring the tree? Is it like a net positive or negative?
Good question. I personally, we have not had a Christmas tree for many, many years, because I think about the tree and I'm like, I think it would rather be outside. I think it would rather be in its natural habitat. And when I think about it, I've had the thought, and I haven't done it, but I have thought about it. It's like, what if we picked a tree in the yard, even if it's not an evergreen, and you just decorate that, and that can be your Christmas tree, and it's there outside, it's living, it's in the soil still. Because what I always think about too, I mean, even as a young girl, I remember having these thoughts of like growing up in suburbia, having the Christmas tree. Obviously, when you're a kid, there's a totally different connection, and there's still adults that have this connection. I mean, shit, my parents still have Christmas trees. Many of my family members do it. I know a lot of other people who are adults that have Christmas trees, and there's nothing wrong with it. But one of the things I would think about, and I still think about today, is you would walk through suburbia after Christmas, and there's all these just trees on the side of the road, and they're all just dead. They're dying. They're brown. I guess I would say if you were to get a tree, like you can still utilize those needles as medicine. You could harvest it before maybe you really brought it down or what have you. I follow a few people online that they'll go to the Christmas tree farms after Christmas, and they'll either ask to have the trees so that they can turn it into medicine, or they'll either offer to buy it, or the people will just give it to them because they're like, yeah, we'll end up just recycling it, or they throw it away, or they burn it, or what have you. So I guess I'm like on the fence with it. I feel like I kind of am in the more of the mindset of like, people are going to do what they're going to do. So regardless, people are going to get Christmas trees probably for the rest of their lives, and that's cool. But for me, I'm like, I'd rather just honor the tree outside or allow it to just be. And I've decorated like a house plant before. Sounds corny, but I totally did. I have this huge peace lily, and I was like, oh my God, I'm just gonna put lights on the peace lily. I mean, it's already there. It's a house plant. It's gonna be here. I mean, the lights will look nice, and it did, and it was great. And I was like, this is a good solution to do that if you're feeling called to want to have a Christmas tree in the corner.
I like that. I mean, if you've already got a plant in the house and it's already kind of part of the family, like let it take part in your Christmas cheer as opposed to bringing some foreign tree in that maybe doesn't even want to be there. Although, so I know this is like such a weird topic, but I've actually heard lots of like pros and cons on this like Christmas tree angle. And one of like the interesting pros, and I swear this sounds like it's reaching, but it does relate in a way. And let me just preface this. Are you a vegetarian by any chance?
No.
Okay. So that relates to the same way that I've heard vegetarian arguments or like pro carnivore arguments in opposition to this. So the premise being that if people didn't want Christmas trees in their homes and that wasn't this big tradition like nationwide, then there's a very real scenario where we might net have less Christmas trees, less evergreens altogether, because now there's not an industry to prop it up. And that in theory, every one of those evergreens that gets chopped down and sold represents another one that's going to have to get planted because of capitalism, right? Like you're not going to sell all the trees and then be like, oh, I guess we got to find a new business now. So now the business becomes planting the trees in bigger abundance than you're selling them so that you've always got a supply. The same way that I would relate to like vegetarianism, where it's a farcical argument, but I love it. But it's that like, well, if you like cows so much that you don't want them to die because you're a vegetarian, but really like if nobody eats cows anymore and nobody drinks milk and nobody has butter, guess what? Like there's no reason for those cows to exist. So over time, they just slowly go extinct. And now nobody has cows, and now cows are just in like history books. So really there's this premise of like meat eaters might actually respect cows more and that they want cows to keep existing the same way that maybe people that do Christmas trees, like they are the cause of evergreens still existing in abundance versus someone just chops it down and they're like, it was in the way, and they turn it into a plank and there's no reason to plant a new one. Then eventually they're all gone.
Yeah, no, I like this thought because I feel the same way with the vegetarian argument, or not even argument, just statement. And I've talked about this before, and actually Mario and I talk about this a lot too, because it's kind of like exactly what you said. Or if people just stopped eating meat or stopped eating beef or whatever, just imagine too, like the overabundance of what could be there that actually is just going to go bad, or like you said, they're going to die off, and so you're actually kind of doing more harm than good. And I think like that's kind of one of the follies of the vegetarian vegan sort of thing. I think sometimes people forget that people are going to do what they're going to do, but there's like a reason for this, and our ancestors did this for a reason. Also, going back to the plants and the trees, it's like they used to intentionally burn, because they know that burning parts of the forest, it renews it. So there is something positive that comes from it. Who wants a forest fire? I don't. No, most people don't want to have
The pine cones, right? They want the forest fire.
Yeah, that's true. There you go. And then it's like, but what if the trees know that, like, yeah, no, that actually this is good for us. We need this, and we're going to turn it. It'll be turned into something positive, regardless of what you said. Kind of like what we were talking about before with like clear cuts, or the plants that pop up after a fire, or what have you. So yeah, I like that thought. I like where you're going with it. And I think that there's something to be said about it, because I would assume that some of these tree farmers look at it like that, of like, no, I'm doing a service. Like, look at all the trees that we have, because I only sell half of my crop in the year. And then the next year, this crop is sold, and then I plant some more or whatever.
I remember that because it was a paper tree farm owner that we talked to in like elementary school or something. And one of the kids asked one of those questions like, don't you feel bad that you're just killing all these trees? And it was like, this is like my business. Like, no, my business is planting the trees, not killing the trees. Like, we actually are the number one planters of paper trees in the entire world because of what we do, which kind of turns it on its head a little bit in like an interesting way, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's true. There's truth in that, And so a lot of because these companies obviously depend on what the tree is bringing forth. So.
God bless capitalism. Right?
Yes.
Do you think acknowledging that there's not a conventional nervous system that we know of in trees and plants, but do you think that they feel pain or fear or like negative emotions of any kind? Like if I go out there and I just start chopping at a tree with a knife, do you think it's like actually like, hey, this sucks?
I think so. And I think they show it in their own way. It always makes me think of the Wizard of Oz. I've thought of the Wizard of Oz a couple times because the apple trees, like when she pulls the apple, they pull an apple off and it's like, ouch, don't do that. That hurts or whatever. But yeah, I think of a pine tree because I think of when, some people will intentionally wound a pine tree in order to get the sap. And that's like one of the traditions or whatever. And so if a tree is wounded like that, particularly a pine, it will start to produce that sap. So I think that it's like self-healing with that sap. So it knows enough that if this exposed injury, or if this injury is continuously exposed, there could be all sorts of things that happen. There could be a fungus that grows that takes out the whole tree or whatever, And so I think that they do feel these things. Do they feel it the same way we feel when our skin is pricked or whatever? I don't know about that. They might, but I think that their actions show that they do feel this stuff and that they are aware of these things happening, because then they might start to abundantly produce as well. If you go and over harvest something, maybe the next year there's going to be a lot more of it because it realized that it got taken out, or it was taken out to the extent that there weren't flowers left over, so that there were no seeds. But it also depends on how a plant reproduces. Some plants are rhizomes, some plants reproduce by their roots. So it might actually be beneficial if you harvested more, because then the roots are going to spread out further and know that they need to make up for what was taken.
Time is flying by. Like I'm having so much fun talking about trees and plants with you. I've got a quick little segment. Let me just play it and then I'll explain it.
Hey, Conspiracy Buffs, cool. I double dare you to take some PCP, the Paranormal Conspiracy Probe. On your marks, get set, and go!
Okay, really simple rules. I'm just going to mention a certain topic or phrase, and you're going to give me a rating from 1 to 10 on how much you believe or give credit in that. So I'll give you an example that we'll start out on. If I said Bigfoot, how much do you think Bigfoot exists or has existed on a scale from 1 to 10? 1 meaning like silly, it's never existed. 10 meaning like, yeah, I've seen them before. Where would you put yourself on that scale?
Okay, I would be an 8 or 9 because I've never seen a Bigfoot, but I do believe. Indeed.
How about flat Earth?
I would be another 8 there because I don't know what the shape is, but I feel like I know that it's not what we've been told.
What about hollow Earth?
I think I would probably be about a 6 on that one.
How about biblical demons, like scary gnashing of teeth? You're a bad boy. I'm gonna spank you and scare you, kind of demon.
9.
Same for angels.
I would say 9 or 10. I'm like a 9.5 on that one.
How about dinosaurs, the way that we've been taught what they were from, I don't know, 70s, 80s, 90s? Like Museum of Natural History, you see the T-Rex skeleton. How accurate do you think that is?
1.
How about fire-breathing and flying dragons existing at any point in history?
Gonna say 7. 7.5.
How about a human being has stepped foot on the moon at any point in the last 100 years?
1.
How about AI can actually gain some real form of consciousness?
6.
How about the possibility of AI summoning a demon on its own accord?
4.
What about plants summoning a demon?
9.
How about thinking negative thoughts so powerfully at a plant that you can kill it from just thinking alone?
9.5.
What about time travel?
Well, see, like 10. I want to say 10, but I've never done it. In terms of like, I didn't wake up and go somewhere else, but I've like astral traveled and I've
Okay, well,
traveled
yeah,
in
astral
dreams.
projection, is that a 10 too then?
Yeah, that's a 10.
Do you think plants can, and we're done with the 1 through 10. I just want to quiz
Okay.
you on some of those. Do you think plants can astral project?
Yes, I do. And they do, in my experience.
Do you think you could switch places with a plant, like Freaky Friday style?
I think
Like you and the plant both grab the like monkey head at the same time and say, "I wish you knew what it was like to be me," and it like the lightning strikes.
Oh man, I want to say yes because I think that they kind of do it in their own way and already. But I like the thought of that. So maybe I'm saying yes because I almost like want it to happen, like physically.
Well, let's say reincarnation's real and you die and you find out like, okay, next time around you have to be a plant or a tree or whatever. Like, what would your choice, like, if everything you know about plants and trees and like their life cycles, which one would you go for?
I would really love to be mugwort. I'd like to come back as mugwort if I could, because it's one of my strongest plant allies. I have a really strong relationship with mugwort, and I find it to be such a beautiful plant in many ways. And I think it has a broad amount of qualities, and it can be used for things like dream time, astral travel. It can be used for longevity. It can be used as food. It can be used as a beauty tonic. It's so wonderful. It grows very prolifically, depending on where you plant it, and so that would be mine in terms of a plant to come back as. Because there's so much wisdom there too, and it's known as cronewort, and there is this connection with like Venus and the moon, and just the realms of that and how powerful something like Venus is. I think that there's like a really deep primordial thing going on with the primordial mother and Venus and mugwort. So that would be my choice.
Do you have an opposite of that? Like, what would be like the worst plan to come back as? You'd be like, oh man, what did I do in the last life that now I'm stuck as a stinkweed or whatever?
Good question. Man, I don't know. I mean, I feel like they all have their purpose somehow. But I guess like I love Dandelion, but Dandelion is like always that's the one that like everyone attacks. Like they're putting all this like weed killer on it and everything else. And I guess I would prefer to not be sprayed with like weed killers and stuff like that. But I gotta say, I love dandelions. So yeah, that's a hard question to answer, I guess. But I guess any of the plants that are always attacked, like, the Forest Service comes out, okay, these are invasive species. We need to eliminate them. And they start spraying everywhere and stuff.
You just drop an Agent Orange and Roundup and everything else on it. And I guess on that, you said you were talking about Roundup in a way, and I'm thinking of Monsanto. Do you think that when Monsanto makes their GMO seeds that are like resistant to Roundup or whatever, and it gets planted inadvertently alongside like the regular version, do you think that there's animosity between those two? Are they like, the prep table and like the goth table in the lunchroom? Or do you think that like, they're like, oh, don't talk to that guy because he's not one of us?
Oh, funny. I think it would be more like a stranger in a strange land, or like alien being, whatever an alien is that comes from another realm. I think that they would look at it more like that. So I think you'd have the plants that would be terrified of that other plant, and then you'd have plants that are more kind of like, wait, who are you? I want to know more about you. And then you'd probably have the plants that totally reject it, just because they wouldn't even be able to make sense of what this is. Or how sometimes they'll say like maybe they have seen an alien or they've seen Bigfoot or whatever, but they like cancel it out because it's so traumatic to them that they just try and and they maybe literally their brain and their psyche has canceled it out because it's so traumatic that they don't want, it's like your body or your mind protecting you in some way. I wonder if there would be some sort of relationship like that with the plants, with the GMO versus the natural plant.
Like a self-preservation that just like snaps into place.
Yeah.
Do you trust Venus flytraps?
I do actually. I actually trust them in a big way because I think that they're doing good for the world, and they're also kind of like they're like living their best life. They're kind of being able to be a plant and chill, and they kind of just like they're able to consume the fly and be there and be happy. And I think that I do trust them, and I think that there's I don't know. There's something beautiful about thinking about a plant that eats meat. I don't know why. I really like that.
Would you change your level of trust if they were big enough to eat human beings?
Maybe. I think I would. I think I would just be more cautious of them, but I think I'd still trust that they're supposed to be doing that for whatever reason, if that makes sense.
If you're in a weird or like a bad mood, I don't know, depressed or angry or just, somewhere in like a negative space that you want to get out of, is there like a go-to plant or garden or like a scent or anything that you would surround yourself with that's like the perfect antidote for that?
Oh, that's such a great question. First off, the first plant that comes to mind for me is actually blue vervain, because blue vervain is really bitter. And what the bitter herbs can do is like really like bring you back into the present moment, because there's like bitterness. And so as soon as it hits your tongue or the back of your throat or something, you can't not acknowledge the bitterness. And sometimes it knocks you out of your self-pity or apathy or depression, because it kind of wakes you up a little bit and reminds you, hey, things might not be so bad, even if you've just gone through what feels like, one of the worst things ever. And that's my go-to for that, for sure. Because also I've been a person that's had to really work hard to not let my anxiety take over. And so it's been kind of a goal of mine to always be aware of that. And blue vervain is known for its ability to help with anxiety, but specifically for people that find themselves who get lost in their thoughts, or you start a lot of tasks at once and then you find that you haven't finished any of them because you were just like all over the place and you weren't able to focus. So that's one. And then I'll say the flower liang liang is one of the scents that's really comforting and calming to me. And it almost it's like floral, but it's sweet and almost kind of like vanilla like sometimes. And that's one of my favorite scents that brings a lot of comfort and joy when I'm not feeling so good.
What plant has the most personality?
Ooh, oh, dude, that's a great question. St. John's wort comes to mind for me because it's so captivating and it's really eye catching, and there's a lot of folklore surrounding it. And St. John has a huge history that we probably don't have time to go into right now. But one of the things about that medicine that is so captivating to me is that it's this bright yellow flower that is actually blooming right now. And when you make medicine with it, like if you make a tincture or an infused oil with it, for an example, while it's fresh, it creates this super deep scarlet red medicine that that some people on the folklore level will actually say signifies or is symbolic of the blood of St. John at his beheading. And there's something so like captivating about it, and the personality of the plant, really, it's very vibrant when you see it, and it has different shapes that come along with it. Like there's a cross that is created within the structure of the stem and the leaves and the branches. Like when you look at it from above, you look at it aerially downward, it creates this crosses all the way down. And it has these leaves that when you pluck a leaf and you hold it up to the sun, you see all these little tiny dots in it. And that's where the Latin name comes from, Hypericum perforatum, the perforations in the leaf. And it's actually where there's like essential oils and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things going on with that plant. And a lot of plants are like that. But for me, St. John's wort has a pretty big personality for sure.
If you wanted to give somebody, I don't know, like the convention would be like a bouquet of flowers or something, but let's say flowers are out of the running. What's like the actual like best plant, or I don't know, like sapling or something to give somebody if it's not going to be a bouquet of flowers?
That's a nice thought. I like ferns. Ferns are great. So if there weren't flowers, but there were ferns, that would be probably my first choice because there's different variations of them. They have different structures during different times of the season. That's where we get the fiddleheads that are, like kind of like the spiral of life, and then they end up unfurling and becoming the really beautiful ferns. And all of them have such different structures. Like some of them are more feathery, some of them are tougher, and they have wider, more broad leaves. So that is always one of the things that I think of, or they're really wonderful even to put into an arrangement of flowers because they kind of can fill a vase, but they have a really great feathery sort of structure to them.
We're wrapping up a little bit here. I'm curious, what's a topic that we could have got on into, but I just didn't get around to asking it, or like a cool thing, maybe teaser for next time?
Well, depending on how how open or wacky you want to get, dude, I have been on this urine therapy kick that has been blowing my freaking mind. And it's wackadoo. And I know a lot of people are probably gonna be like, what? Like urine therapy, or you're drinking pee, or you're putting on your skin? Oh my God. But like, dude, if you're open to talking about something like that or like exploring that, yeah, it's been crazy, and I've been kind of like bamboozled and awakened by it. So that's kind of wild.
Well,
I don't know if that's
for just a couple minutes. When you say urine therapy, are we talking about literally drinking piss?
Yes, I am talking about that.
Does it have to be your own? Can it be other people's? Is there like a network of, like, oh, like Danny's piss down the road is like perfect this time of year. Go get yourself a batch, or is it more of like a personal thing?
It's more of a personal thing, I would say. And from my research and my experience, it would be more of a personal thing. I think that if there was an emergency situation of sorts, because there is emergency medicine that can come from, there's solutions to emergency injuries that can come from urine. So I think in that instance, it could be somebody else. But like, for example, they say that if you have an infant, and it's your infant, it's your baby, you birthed it, or the father too, who wouldn't have birthed it, but you know what I mean. If they have an ear infection or something, like one of the best medicines is to use the mother's urine in the ear. And so there's all this stuff going on with that. And there's been such a weave that I've been following and learning about that it's kind of just been really mind blowing. And it's something that I've known about for years and kind of in the back of my mind always thought, I bet I'll try that at some point, or I could see myself venturing. I know who thinks that. A weirdo, whatever. But I'm like, I've always had
that one day.
I'll grab a glass of my own at some point. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just been kind of crazy. So if anyone wants to learn more about that, we could talk about that.
What kind of quantities are we talking about? Like 16, 64-ounce big gulps? Are we just talking like little shots or what?
Shots. It's the volume has grown as I've gotten more used to it, I guess. But typically it would be anywhere from like 2 to maybe like 6 ounces, I'd say. I've been finding a lot of great uses for it for wounds and stuff, like the acceleration of healing after applying urine to a wound. Like I haven't had anything that's like super like a super deep wound or anything recently, but like scratches, scrapes, stuff like that, like literally soaking a piece of paper towel in urine and wrapping my wound with it at night before I go to bed, and literally the next day is like it's healing noticeably faster than it would have, or having gone to bed with a wound that you're right on that brink where you start to see it's getting red, it's sensitive or whatever, and you think to yourself, I should probably do something about this, and then waking up and it's like, wow, it's not painful anymore, it's not inflamed, and it's like way better than it would have been if I would have used anything else. And I'm an herbalist salve woman, so I make salves. I've chosen to I'll be like, all right, here's the experiment. I'm not going to put this salve on that I know works, that I know will help heal it, and I'm just going to use the urine. And I've been blown away that the urine actually accelerates the healing quicker and brings relief faster than that salve would. And so it's not to say that the salve isn't good and that you shouldn't have salve, and that, I mean, I will always have salve. I'll always make salve, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, I've just been doing these little experiments on myself so that I can learn more. And yeah, it's kind of been just this like crazy thing. And I've just been realizing too, that there's a lot of history to it. There's a lot of cultures that have utilized urine as medicine or as just like a longevity tonic. So there's like this whole ancestral connection to it that I think is really interesting, that I've been diving into and learning more about. So I've only been at it for about 5 months, so I'm not like an expert by any means, but the things I've noticed within that short amount of time have been pretty mind-blowing. And it's just one of the things that I feel like I was a little bit apprehensive to even talk about it, but I've done a couple shows on my channel about it. I've interviewed a woman named Megan McDonald, who I've been learning a lot about it. And I was like, it was the first show I've had that before I released it, where my heart was like pounding. Like I was like it felt like I was about to go on stage to speak to people or something. Like I was like, holy shit, this is the first show that I've released that I've felt this. And then I was like, well, I think that's actually a good thing. Maybe that's what we need a little bit more in our lives.
I did have a recent show. We interviewed a guy named Will Blunderfield, who's the Two Soul Shaman, and he urinated live while I was asking him a question. And said he was gonna drink it, but he was like, I'm not gonna do that to your audience. I'll do it like after the interview's over. So I'm not I won't blush at this because I've seen it in action before. Are there like cocktail recipes? Like, do people meddle like mint and add like bitters or simple syrups, or is it like, does it just have to be pure urine?
No, totally. That's a good question. I don't know about the cocktails, but I do know that one of the like introductory ways into it that you can ease someone into it is by adding it to things. So, for example, taking like 1 ounce of your morning wee and putting it into a smoothie or mixing it with juice or something like that. And that's actually a good way that you can introduce it to a child as well. Like if they were really ill and this was something that you were open to doing and, and not necessarily sneaking it to them because I'm not really into that either. Like I'd rather know what's in whatever someone's giving me, or if they're like, "Hey, are you open to try this?" or whatever. But I don't have children, so I can't say what that would be like to have to give them something that they don't want. Are you going to sneak it or whatever? But that is a way. And I would assume that there are people that have muddled mint or something into it. One of the things I will say about it that I'm learning is that there's a lot of like really new agey stuff that's mixed in with it. And so one of my goals kind of with what I'm learning and hopefully in the future being able to teach people about is to kind of bring more of a grounded sense to it, because it's been one of the things that I've just noticed that there's kind of this oversaturation of the new agey kind of like mentality or way of looking at things with it. And I think it kind of dilutes it a little bit, or it kind of almost like gives it a bad name because there's just something weird going on with the new age program. And so I'm kind of like, dude, I want to bring more of a grounded sense to this so that it can maybe be a little more approachable, or because at least for me, when it's too new agey, I like automatically kind of am like skeptical. And so I've kind of been trying to find that balance and then trying to just bring it into my life and see how it works with me and everything else. So yeah.
Do you think if someone peed into a Bud Light, anyone would be able to tell the difference?
Oh my God, that's so funny. Well, they probably would due to the lack of carbonation, but flavor wise, man, yeah. It's actually kind of, it doesn't taste like Bud Light, but I'm definitely not a fan of the Bud Light, Miller Lights, and those sorts of things. And it is more of like a swill kind of like pea sort of like drink.
I just wanted to mention this because I guess the first time that I even brushed up against the concept of urine therapy was like a silly TV show on Comedy Central. It was called Nathan for You. I don't know if you ever heard of this show before. So I highly recommend it. It's a weird, surreal, absurdist show. And Nathan for You, the premise is that like he's one of these guys that goes into like a failing business and tries to help them figure out like how to make their business better. It's like a bar rescuer, one of these things, but it's absurd. Like it's absurd to the point where you're like, what the hell is going on? And this particular episode, which doesn't have anything to do with the urine therapy, but the premise was that there was a gas station and the guy was trying to get more people going through his gas station. So he came up with this idea that you get free gas and you get a big coupon for free gas, but there was this fine print and it was only free if you like hiked up like on foot 4 miles and stayed overnight at this campsite and then went back. So it was like untenable. Like no logical person would actually go through the things to get the free gas, and you don't realize it until after you pay for it. So anyways, they do this whole thing and a few people stick with it, which is really weird. And he goes back to the guy, and at the very end of the episode, and it's like, all right, great, everything is good. And the guy mentions something about like, do you ever drink kids' pee? The gas station guy asked this to Nathan, and he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, little kids pee, you never drink it? And he's like, you have to explain this to me. And he starts talking about like, yeah, my great grandpa and like everyone in my family, once there's a new baby born into the family, before they turn the age of 7, like their urine is highly coveted, and all the old people drink the newborn's pee because it has like all these magical properties about improving your health and your eyesight and getting rid of pain and all this stuff. So that was wild, but it's also predates any of the woo-woo, like hippie, new agey aspect. Like there is some very real, deeply ingrained folklore from cultures outside of America, outside of the weird conspiracy and like homesteader community that have brought these beliefs with them, and that I think it's still like this ultimate taboo. Just like you were embarrassed at first to even like mention it out loud or like admit to this, but that has existed for so long. Like our great grandparents have been drinking our pee and just not talking about it for centuries, it seems like.
Dude, yes, I love that. And this is interesting because that is exactly what I've been thinking about of like, dude, at some point, all of our ancestors, regardless of what culture we were from, were doing this to some extent. And maybe they weren't drinking it. Maybe they were just literally using it in the garden as fertilizer. Maybe they were using it for wound care. You know what I mean? It's like evolved. But that is what I've been coming across is that also I haven't experimented with this, but I know like in China, one of the customs is that they will gather urine from young boys or young children, I think. And what they do is they actually boil eggs in it. And they do this around Easter time. And you can buy these eggs like on the street corners. And it's this whole longevity sort of symbolic practice that they do, that they think and they feel and they've gotten the benefits from eating these hard boiled eggs that have been boiled in the urine from young children, which sounds really weird. Like even when I say it out loud, I feel like I feel strange. And then my mind starts going on all the other places that we know where these kinds of things can go. But like when I think about it from a non-judgmental place or a place of practicality, I think, well, children are more pure than someone that has lived 50 years. You know, they are in more of a state of health sometimes, not all the time, depending on what's going on. But there is that whole thing going on with the youthfulness and the purity of like a young child, which is also why there's weird attraction to it, which I don't condone and I think is really repulsive and everything. So there's so many ways to look at it, but I really like where you're going with it of the ancestral connection. And I think that it's something just worth looking into and worth thinking about. And yeah, it's been really intriguing. And I want to watch the episode with the shaman. So was he peeing on air because he was saying that he utilizes it for medicine?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
He's a full advocate of urine therapy and all sorts of other therapies that are incredibly taboo, but very unapologetic about it. Very like not embarrassed whatsoever. Talks about what he's thinking about, no filter. I highly recommend. I want to say though that if you look up Will Blunderfield, the Tool Soul Shaman, look him up on Instagram. Do not, under any circumstance, unless you know what you're getting into, look him up on Twitter. Don't do it. Just don't do
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Look him up on Instagram first, and then if you are like, I'm gonna go all the way down this rabbit hole, then maybe look him up on Twitter. But please, just take my advice on this. Start with Instagram and then work your way through it. And one extra parting interesting urine fact that doesn't come up enough. There's not a lot of things that prompt this, but this was fascinating that in old times, I don't know if it was Ireland or Scotland, but they used to temper swords in the urine of redheaded children. I think redheaded boys, like under the age of 13, their urine was highly coveted, and they would temper the swords in them, and it would give the sword some kind of mystical, magical property, like a protection spell in battle or something. I don't even know where the origin of this came from, but I found enough sources that have claimed that this was a thing that was done. I find it endlessly fascinating that there's like some kind of use for what we just consider waste.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. That's an interesting tidbit. I've found things like that too. Like in Roman times, they used to, back in Rome, if I'm remembering correctly. So don't 100% quote me, but basically that they would collect the urine of the community and they would use it for laundry. And that's another thing with this you can use it to clean your windows, to clean your clothes, and all this. This is what is claimed. I have not done that. I haven't crossed that threshold yet, but that is something that has come through. But there's like all these traditions, and it's pretty wild. And I appreciate you asking me this question, and appreciate the fact that we're talking about it and that you're open to talking about it, because that's the thing. I just think that I don't know, man. I think that we are built to heal. That is one of my biggest beliefs. And I think that our bodies are highly intelligent. I think our bodies know they're doing. And I think that this is probably one urine when I'm speaking of this is one of the like biggest hand it to the man kind of things that you can do because dude, the pharmaceutical companies, the allopathic medicine, they do not want us to know this. And because it's free. And exactly like you said, we are producing it multiple times a day for the rest of our lives from the beginning to the end. We've been producing it in our mother's womb. We swam in it in our mother's womb for all those months. And it helped to develop our skin, our organs, our hair, our nails, everything. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it actually doesn't seem as wackadoo as it might seem when you talk about it from this perspective, I guess, of what? You're drinking your pee? So
Well, unironically, someone will hear that. Someone's going to be like, that's gross. Someone's out there drinking pee. And that week, they're going to go and get a Sour Patch Kids Pilsner and drink it and be like, oh, this is good. Like, I don't know. I feel like if all things being equal, you shouldn't have any right to judge someone drinking pee if you're going to go and like down a Diet Baja Blast with like lime or something. I don't know.
dude, totally. That's exactly my mentality with it too, of like the amount of absolutely nasty things that people consume on a day and they're afraid of that. It kind of just symbolically, I think too, if you're so adverse to it and it is like you're disgusting, I will never talk to you again, I won't touch you, whatever. It says more about you and what you think about yourself and your body and your how you carry yourself, your life and everything else than it does about the person that's actually trying to benefit themselves. So that's kind of my thought process on it too and how I look at it. So just something to keep in mind as well.
All right, I'm glad to ask. I'm glad we went on that little tangent of urine therapy. I feel like we've covered plenty for one episode. Give people one extra shout on like where they can find you and any products or projects that you got going on right now.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Thomas. This was a great conversation. You had great questions. Love where we went, and I love how your mind thinks and works. So thank you again. michelleshealinghome.com for all things healing home. You can there sign up for my newsletter, which is my full moon offering newsletter. Comes out once a month on every full moon. I only send out one email a month, so I won't bombard your inbox or anything, but that's the best way to keep up with me if you're wanting to find out what products I'm making. I currently have some offerings right now that were released on the solstice, so you can check that out there. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. You can also find me on Patreon, patreon.com/thehealinghome, and YouTube as well. Michelle's Healing Home. I have a podcast that comes out every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Awesome. And just a final shout out to my Cherie, who I think suggested you to me. So thank you, Cherie, for all the awesome suggestions as always. And thank you to all the Patreons and all the supporters. And if you like what you see here and you want to see more, please consider joining the Patreon, and I'll throw your name in the credits that we play at the end of these episodes. So thanks again, Michelle, for spending some time with me, talking about all types of things. Hopefully you got some great entertainment suggestions out of this. The Happening with Mark Wahlberg and Nathan For You. If for no other reason you end up watching some Nathan For You because of this, net positive.
Awesome. Yes, I love that. And thank you, my Cherie. Much love to you, and aloha, my lady. That's very nice of you. I appreciate you suggesting. Thank you. This was great.
Ready for a cosmic conspiracy about Stanley Kubrick, moon landings, and the CIA? Go visit nasacomic.com.
nasacomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com. Oh, nasacomic.com. CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm
straight answer is a 40-page comic about Stanley Kubrick directing the Apollo space missions.
Yeah, go visit NASAcomic.com.
This is the perfect read for comic, Kubrick, or conspiracy fans of all ages. For more details, visit nasacomic.com.
Spread the word with propaganda packs, all for just $40 shipped at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
These huge all-weather slaps will last in public for years to come. Remind citizens that birds are not real. Self-immolation is an option, and might make you magnetic. Do your part and get a propaganda pack today from paranoidamerican.com.
Yeah, paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
What are you waiting for? Go to paranoidamerican.com right now and get a paranoid propaganda pack.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Matters not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when a beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.